All right, and good evening. Welcome to the Williston Development Review Board. For tonight is November 26, 2024. My name is Pete Kelly. I'm chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. Zoom attendees, please stay muted unless it's your turn to speak. For Zoom technical questions, contact planning staff through Zoom chat. I'll begin by taking a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Nate Andrews. Here. Paul Christensen.
Present.
Lisa Braden-Harder.
Here.
Scott Riley.
Here.
Dave Turner is absent. He got tied up at work, and the chair is present. We have 5 in attendance. We do have a quorum. 4 is needed for a quorum. The Development Review Board, DRB, follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, aka public hearings like court, pursuant to Williston Unified Development Bylaw, WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute, and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing tonight, first question for the DRB members. Does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest? I think that actually would apply to you. So,
Right. Yes.
do you have a conflict of interest?
Well, I'm a neighbor in 24-09.
Okay, and are you going to recuse yourself on that one?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Any other conflicts by the DRB members? Hearing none. Second question, does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Hearing none. Okay, first up on the agenda is the public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on issues that are not on tonight's agenda. Does anyone present in the room want to address the board? Or the individual participating by Zoom want to address the board on issues not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Now we're going to segue into tonight's hearing. We have a number of items on the agenda. First, we've got 3 certificates of appropriateness, and then we will go into a DP 25-04, which is a pre-app for a 9-lot subdivision, then DP 24-09, which is a discretionary permit review for a proposed 6-lot subdivision. And then we've got DP 25-03, which is a discretionary permit to amend final plans on Commerce Street. So first up is the certificate of appropriateness, the 3 of them, and the first up of those 3 is HP 25-02. This is the Williston Federated Church. If the applicant would please come forward. Mr. Lamb, good evening. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Excuse me, Anthony Lamb, 24 BB Lane, Williston.
Thank you. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. This is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for 8195 Williston Road. This property is located in the National Register Historic District of the Village Zoning District. The applicant is proposing 3 elements to this project. The first is to replace the second floor windows with Sierra Pacific premium vinyl windows. There will be both double hung and casement windows, and the casements will have a check rail to match the double hung appearance with exterior grills on all windows. The second project is to construct a ground level covered porch on the rear facade. So this is the north side of the building away from Williston And the third proposal is to, the second level unit has a stairwell on the side. Replace that stairwell and do a covered, cover over it. In order to accommodate the cover, they're gonna shift the door. Currently, the door frame interacts with the frieze board and the roof trim, so they are going to shift the doorway so that all of the decorative detailing can remain as existing. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee reviewed this application. Their recommendations was that the project complies as proposed. They did note that typically fiberglass or aluminum clad windows are preferred. However, these already are existing vinyl replacement windows, so they found that the vinyl was acceptable. And these are improving the appearance overall with the exterior grille pattern, where currently the replacement windows, the grills are between the glass. With that, I will turn it over to the DRB. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Mr. Lamb, do you have anything to supplement the staff report?
I think that sets it out succinctly. I mean, this is a rental apartment, these are two rental apartments. And we're bringing different aspects of it. The code, meeting the fire code is the primary reason for putting the casement windows in and rebuilding the stairwell.
DRB members, questions?
This is off the back of the building, correct?
Yes, would be, it's not, there's one there now, but it's not visible from the street.
That's all I need.
Nate? Nope. Scott?
But
Any comments or questions from the audience? Any raised hands on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Any final questions? Okay, I'm going to close HP 25-02. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is HP 25-03 / AP 25-008 for 77 Penny Lane. Is the applicant here?
Hello,
Good evening. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Michelle Carr, 77 Penny Lane, Williston.
Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. This is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for 77 Penny Lane, a property that's located in the National Register Historic District of the Village Zoning District. This is a single proposal to replace an existing deck with a screened-in porch. It will have a standing seam metal roof to match the existing structure. And the kick wall on the screen porch will have wood siding reveal with style and color to match the existing. The Historic Design Advisory Committee reviewed this application. Their recommendation is that it complies as proposed. I do want to note for the board that this structure had a asphalt shingle roof, and they are in the process of replacing it with standing seam metal for a recent certificate that was issued either earlier this year or last year. With that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Michelle, do you have anything to add to the staff report?
No, that follows what we plan to do.
Okay, great. DRB members, questions for the applicant? Paul?
Which side of the building is this deck gonna be on?
It's the opposite corner from the driveway, so on the back side.
That one, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I need.
Okay. Scott? Any questions or comments from the audience?
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay, I'm going to close HP 25-03 at 7:10. Thank you. Okay, next up is HP 25-04, BL Properties LLC. This is for changing a roof at 7921 Williston Road. Is the applicant present?
Right, I'm right here.
He's on Zoom.
Oh, hey, good evening. State your name and address for the record, please.
Zach Labrizzi, 7921 Williston Road.
Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. This is a request for certificate of appropriateness for 7921 Williston Road, a property located in the National Register Historic District of the Village Zoning District. The applicant is currently proposing a project to replace the slate roof with a slate roof. The certificate of appropriateness is required because they're changing the pattern from the diagonal diamond pattern to a standard rectangular pattern. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee reviewed this application, and their recommendation is that it complies as proposed. The applicant in their materials provided a report from Ann Cousins, a certified historic preservation historian, about this proposed change. In summary, the slate diagonal pattern was typically used on sheds and barns because it required less material. There's less overlap between the slates, so you need fewer, but it also is prone to weakness, faster weathering, they're more difficult to replace, and leakage. So the proposal to go with the traditional pattern with a standard overlap for the slates is more durable in terms of longevity and easier to repair individual slates. So based on the historic preservationist report that was prepared and the recommendations of the advisory committee, the recommendation is that this proposal complies as proposed. And there's a picture of the.
Yep. Okay. Zach, do you have anything to augment Emily's staff report?
I do not.
Okay. DRB members, any questions?
Other than why did it take so long?
Members of the public, any questions or comments? Okay, we're going to close HP 25-04 at 7:12. Okay, now we go into DP 25-04. This is for a proposed 9-lot open space subdivision. Who is here representing the applicant? Brian, good evening.
Good evening.
If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Brian Courier, Larry Burke Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex.
And John Marcotte, representing the owners of the property.
Thank you, John. Staff goes next.
Thank you, Pete. Alright, this is a request for pre-application review of a proposed 9-lot subdivision on Caboose Lane in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. The subject parcel is approximately 200 acres. Because it's larger than 10.5 acres, it is subject to the open space requirements of this zoning district. The applicant has not yet decided if they will participate in growth management or if they plan to meet the requirements for inclusionary zoning. There will be 8 building lots, each with a proposed dwelling on it. The 9th lot will be the required open space lot. This project is not subject to design review, however, is subject to Conservation Commission review. Staff recommendation tonight is that the DRB take testimony and close, deliberate, and approve the application with recommendations as drafted. I do note that we provided additional staff reports to you this evening with an additional recommendation versus the version that was submitted to you in your packets. Project history, the first
Can you rewind for a second?
Yeah.
Can you point that out, the change for the record, please?
Yep, the change for the record in the staff report is on page 3, the discussion of WGB 31.7 open space and recommendation 2HI on page 8. be highlighting those when I get to those discussion points as well.
And is the applicant aware of this change in your staff report?
Yes, I spoke with both the engineer and the applicant today about this.
Okay, great. Continue, please.
Thanks, Pete. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing this proposal. Permit history includes a subdivision done in 1995 and another one in 2004. The Conservation Commission comments are included in your list of recommendations. In terms of interdepartmental review, we have also included the comments from the Public Works Department, noting the engineering fee as well. The Fire Department comments have been excluded from the recommendations. Their plan review policy is a select board policy, not an ordinance, and has no authority for enforcement. Many of the requests in that memo do not have a parallel standard in the bylaw that we can adopt their recommendations. Two of their requests can be accommodated. One, the request to have the driveway be 14 feet in width, as well as E911 addressed. Comment letters. No letters were received at the time of mail out. 2 comment letters were received as of this morning, and as of this evening, we received no further letters. In terms of the agricultural rural residential zoning district, we have standard recommendations. Compliance is anticipated with the dimensional standards. Building height is determined when a permit is pulled to build the dwellings. Setbacks from South Road are 50 feet, and then the other setbacks are either 15 feet or determined by the landscape buffers. Frontage, all lots are expected to meet the minimum frontage requirement of 40 feet on an existing or proposed private driveway. Open space development. This was one place where the staff report was updated this morning. So the parcel is larger than 10.5 acres, and it is proposing to set aside at least 75% as an open space lot. Their proposal is approximately 96% with 194 acres. The recommendation is that Lot 6 and be reconfigured with Lot 9 open space. Our bylaw requires that protected open space be contiguous with open space on adjoining parcels. Because the abutting property on Beartown Lane has a Vermont Land Trust conservation easement, the recommendation is that Lot 9 be reconfigured to provide a width of about 100 to 200 feet between Lot 6 and this property line. And this was the recommendation that was added as well, number 2HI.
And in your opinion, does that address the concerns raised by the foresters?
I believe so. I also informed them of this staff report to address that comment about the open space.
Okay, thank you.
31.8 housing design and open space development compliance is also anticipated. The discretionary permit will need to show half-acre building envelopes, that the home lots will comply with the clearing limits established in the bylaw. And the proposal is anticipated to comply with the cluster requirements, noting that the Conservation Commission did not make specific recommendations for those standards. 31.9 lots and home site design. Recommendation 4B and 4C are included. This is for the clearing limit, and noting that things like access drives, utility lines, and underground utilities do not count towards that overall clearing limit. What follows is a list of standards in 31.9. Most compliance is either anticipated or it's not applicable, where another standard in the bylaw provides a regulation. For example, water supply, wastewater, safe road access.
Water supply, let's touch upon that, because there is a comment letter regarding concern about well and a drawdown of the water supply and how it could impact an existing home. Could you speak to how that works in the town of Williston, please?
Yep, so on-site water and wastewater are handled out of Chapter 15 of our bylaw. Our bylaw requires that plans are prepared by a licensed designer for well and septic design. Because this property is at the reduced density of 1 dwelling per 10 acres, the hydrology testing requirements of Chapter 15 are not required, and they're duplicative because ultimately the state has jurisdiction over well and wastewater design. So at discretionary permit, the applicant will be required to prepare those plans in compliance with the state's regulations. And they will also separately have to obtain a state water and wastewater permit.
Great, thank you.
All right. Jumping back up to Chapter 11, growth management and affordable homes. They have two paths forward. They can either provide one dwelling affordable at 100% area median income, or they can go to growth management in March 2025. The motion in this staff report gives them the option to take either path. If they do proceed to growth management, they must meet a minimum score of 40 points between the four categories for this part of town. Access, compliance is anticipated. There are two exemptions that are discussed here. So lots 1 and 2 will be served from South Road, and lots 3 through 8 will have access from a shared driveway. This existing private driveway, Caboose Lane, serves 3 separate lots that have 4 homes, so 2 single-family homes and a duplex. And the proposed driveway will extend Caboose Lane along the existing forestry road, traversing Lot 9 open space. So there's 2 exceptions that the bylaw allows for. One is the driveway length. Typically, the driveway length is limited to, and I don't think I quoted it here, but 12 or 1,300 feet. The bylaw does allow for a longer driveway where the density is reduced to 1 unit per 10 acres, which is proposed here. And they are proposing to extend the driveway 1,800 feet, bringing the total length to about 2,500 feet. Because of the configuration of the lot, it has limited frontage on South Road and Beartown Lane, and the configuration of wetlands, as well as thinking about some of our habitat standards, utilizing the existing forestry road minimizes impact. The driveway length exception is recommended in the list of recommendations for this application. Number 2, there's another exception for the number of units. So the driveway will have 10 units on it, 4 existing and 6 proposed, where typically 5 are allowed on a private driveway. The bylaw does allow this exemption where if you were to go from a private driveway to a road, meaning a lot more pavement, 64 feet of right-of-way, the bylaw allows an exception to preserve landscape features and neighborhood character. Again, that density of 1 unit per 10 acres is required, and that is proposed here. There are several comments that the fire department requested that are non-jurisdictional. I do note that WDB 1326 does have standards for private driveways, so that they be 12 to 16 feet in width. The recommendation here is 14, that it have 4 feet clear on either side where it goes through brush or forested area. And then it also needs to meet the construction standards, that there be pull-offs every 400 feet, and then that the addressing be coordinated with the E911 coordinator for road names and property numbers. We did touch on infrastructure in terms of water and wastewater. I do note that private utilities must be located underground, things like electricity and telecommunications. Maintenance compliance is also anticipated. However, if they do plan on a shared solid waste container for the property and it's within public view of South Road, then it must be screened and located in compliance with Chapter 16, so that it has some sort of fence enclosure around it. A density compliance is anticipated here. At the typical density for this zoning district, a theoretical maximum of 54 units could be allowed. However, because they need to do the 1 unit per 10 acres minimum or reduced density standard, their maximum limit is 13 units, and they're proposing 9. Landscaping compliance is anticipated. Lots 1, 2, 3, and 6 should maintain a 50-foot type 1 existing vegetation buffer along the existing parcel boundaries. And I believe with our recommendation about lot 6 and lot 9, this chapter does provide flexibility for a standard 15-lot setback once that parcel line is moved away from the adjoining open space. In general, the standard of Table 23A is that open space developments provide ample buffers along the existing exterior property boundaries. Street trees are not applicable because this passes through a wooded area, and open space developments formal plantings are typically inappropriate. Conservation areas, so there are several specific recommendations. The Conservation Commission is recommending a habitat disturbance assessment be conducted. This property does include core habitat and wildlife travel corridors. Scenic viewshed. The very top portion of this parcel does have significant viewshed resources. However, no development is proposed up in that ridgeline area. And lot 6 is proposed within that secondary background area. Lots 1 and 2 are in the foreground area along South Road. The Conservation Commission discussed this with the applicant, but they made no specific recommendations. And there's several conservation areas that are not applicable to this property. Watershed health, the Conservation Commission also provided specific recommendations. Because the area of disturbance is more than 2 acres, it's high risk and must include a professionally prepared erosion and runoff control plan at discretionary permit. Wetlands and watershed protection buffers, so this property has had some delineations done. There are significant wetlands on this parcel, and the plan must maintain the building lots out of those wetlands and wetland buffer areas. The proposed driveway, which is an existing forestry road, does cross these areas, and our bylaw does allow road, trail, and utility crossings of wetlands and buffers where there's no feasible alternative and where it's the minimum extent feasible for the crossing. Lastly, source water protection. This property is mapped in a source water protection area associated with Lake Iroquois. Our bylaw has no standards about this. It merely says that I, as zoning administrator, inform the Champlain Water District for comment. And lastly, impact fees. Recreation and parks impact fee and transportation impact fee are assessed at the time of administrative permit. I do note that as of last week, the school impact fee has been retired. What follows are the recommendations for the DRB's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. John and Brian, what do you have to supplement or add to Emily's staff report? That's question 1. And question number 2, I'd like you to address if you have any concerns with the staff recommendations, items 1 through 6.
Yep. So we did read the staff report. It was very well done. The only comment I had was under the density section. It states that 9 units are proposed, so it's a 9-lot subdivision, 8 building lots. The 9th lot is a 194-acre open space lot. So 8 building lots instead of 9, but that's all I had.
Okay, great. DRB members, questions, please.
In regards to the length of the driveway and the requested extension, are there physical barriers or anything else that prevent you from having separate driveways that you could point out to us?
Yeah, so we did explore another access off Beartown. We do have frontage on Beartown. As there's no existing impacts in place, such as the forestry road that Emily noted, those would be new wetland crossings. So we didn't believe that creating substantial new wetland crossings coming off Beartown or even off the other frontage of South Road would be permittable by the wetland program.
Okay. And in regards to the water, the groundwater testing, have you done any testing? And is there a hydrogeologic map that you've looked at? Because it's not, the bylaw is not so clear that it says the density alone is enough to automatically grant this exemption. I believe what it says is that in the presence of that density or a lower density, along with a hydrogeological map that supports it, the DRB may waive that requirement. So do you have any other map or anything else you can provide? And I understand it's duplicative.
Yeah, and what I would say about that is I think the bylaw is overreaching in this regard. on-site water systems are the jurisdiction of the state of Vermont. There's only, I think, Charlotte's the only town now that kept jurisdiction. Colchester gave it back a few years ago. But the drilled well locations would be pretty substantially removed from South Road. There's only 2 lots on South Road. The remainder are set back quite a distance from South Road. But when you apply for a state wastewater permit, you have to submit water quality results once the well's been drilled, well drillers' yields, and you have to do storage calculations if that's necessary.
In terms of that geological map question, we don't have one adopted in our bylaw or our town plan. For example, our town plan does have a soil suitability map for septic, but there's not a comparable thing for on-site wastewater, and that state A&R atlas doesn't provide, the comparable thing. So I'm not quite sure what map that citation in the bylaws is referring to.
I'm not claiming to understand a lot about well drilling or hydrogeologic surveys, but I'm curious, and I imagine this may not matter anyway because you're drilling well below the surface, but is the elevation of this lower than that of the neighbors that gave the testimony in that letter?
If they're located on South Road, the 2 lots along South Road are, where the building sites will be lower than South Road, but the rest of it is all substantially higher.
Anything else, Nate?
No, thank you.
Lisa? Paul?
Yeah, out of curiosity, the open parcel will be available for forestry, correct?
The 194 acres, forestry would be an allowed use. It's allowed to be held privately. There's a number of agricultural forestry practices that are allowed.
Yeah, well, that was what I was curious.
Yeah.
So how are they, where is the access road to that chunk for the loggers to get in there and get out?
So,
Which part? Are they gonna cut through, like lot 6?
Sure.
Are they gonna cut between lot 7 and 8, or how?
Yeah, so when the open space parcel is created, it'd be dedicated to likely the 8 lots. We're not sure if some of the existing lots might be part of that HOA or not, but essentially each one would have a, let's say a 1/8 controlling interest in that land. Should the future homeowners decide to do logging, which having 8 people agree on something like that, I'd say is less likely than when the Marcotte's on the property singularly. They may come in from Beartown, they may use Caboose Lane, but it would have to be a decision by HOA at that point.
Okay.
Any other questions, Paul?
No.
Scott? Okay. Members of the public, if you've got a comment, if you'd like to address the board, please come forward to this table. Paul, is there a chair there?
We have the standing microphone.
Standing microphone, okay. So if anybody has comments, like to address the board, please come forth to the public mic. Good evening. State your name and address for the record, please.
Karen Dunway, 8 Beartown Lane. So my concern, I do have a couple of concerns. One, I just want to say I do have concern about the water issue, whether there's enough water. I know that the neighbors that wrote the letter are not the only ones that have issues with not having enough water, and so that is a big concern that I have about the project. And the other concern is more personal in nature. Our backyard backs up directly onto what's the proposed lot 2, and I am concerned because of the utility lines going in, especially about having like a visual buffer between my house and that lot. So that is my concern.
So, can you explain where the utility lines are now?
They go like directly over my house and then run parallel to
Okay. So,
And those are existing utility lines right now? And would those existing would you be pulling from those existing utility lines?
We likely would take a power service from it, but we envision the lots being on the low side of those utility
Okay,
lines.
all right.
They're a little abnormally further from South Road than you would expect.
They're not on the road, they're in the woods.
Yeah, they're probably,
They're right here. And this is my house.
Yep.
right, so obviously there's an easement associated with that power line, which we'll have to adhere to if we're not gonna relocate the pole.
Right.
so I apologize. So what is the concern about an existing power line?
My concern is that because of that existing power line especially, there's not much visual buffer, right? It reduces the amount of visual buffer because, especially because they recently came in and widened the power line, so they make it so that we don't use power so often, which I do appreciate because we do power a lot. But it just, like, visually, I'm concerned about having a visual buffer between my house and the
But you won't, you won't be able to plant a buffer underneath the power line?
Exactly.
Okay. And they're gonna have to be able to pull their power from the power line through their easement.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
the power line goes over their house. They won't let us,
Directly over.
they won't
it
let
actually
us
goes,
do
is that right? It goes over your house?
Goes directly over.
Gotta be the only one in the state.
Right, so we'll, that won't be the case here, so we wouldn't be within that corridor.
Right.
Right.
We obviously can't build in the corridor, the
Right.
easement, so we're gonna have to tuck that house back into the existing woods as much as we can within the confines of the wetlands. So it's, our
That's
house,
my concern, I think, is just that lot, it just looks like it's gonna be hard to do that to me without it really feeling like there's a house like right in my back.
So the proposal in the landscape buffers and the line that I've drawn on that map is the 50-foot buffer. So because it's forested, it can do a 50-foot existing vegetation buffer, which is the widest landscape buffer our bylaw provides for. That's approximately 50 feet.
But Brian, there are no housing sites proposed yet for the lots, are there?
There's not.
There are not.
So we're allowed.
So is it possible to pull the future housing site forward away from her house?
Yeah, I mean, we
When
can-
it comes to DP,
Yeah,
you know,
we're only allowed a half-acre building.
I understood,
Pretty
but you
small.
can shift it around a little bit so it's, you know, it takes into account where her house is.
Yep, yeah, to note that there's another house to the south also.
You said that there's another house to the south?
Yeah,
I mean, I see an
Parent
open,
and
I see an
Stokes.
open space, right?
yeah, the parent and
With this,
Stokes.
what are you talking, the Stokes house?
Yep. It's a little
Okay.
further away, but
So we'd need to, at some point, we'd want to see where they were located too, so it doesn't show up on, doesn't appear to show up on here.
yeah, the ortho is a little light,
Yeah,
but,
anyways,
yeah.
it does sound like that they should be able to shift the houses around to satisfy your request. We won't be able to see that until it comes back in the discretionary permit level, but they are making a note of it.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Which was first? The power right away or her house?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
their house was there, their original house was there a very long time ago. And the rules weren't so formal back then, so there was some type of a co-op power line that went over, and then everything has grown up. Their house
This is the Velcro thingy, right?
you know, Vermont Electric Co-op, it's their main line along South Road.
Okay.
Yeah, Velco would be a transmission line, it would be a lot bigger.
Yeah, single phase, but still.
So members of the public, any further questions, comments? Any Any raised hands in Zoom? Okay. DRB members, any final questions? John and Brian, any final comments? Okay, I'm going to close DP 25-04 at 7:41. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is, my package is out of order. Next up is DP 24-09. Would the applicant please come forward? Good evening. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Anna Benedetto, and I'm the owner of 1318 Butternut Road.
And I'm Doug Goulette from Trudell Consulting Engineers. I live at 240 Southridge Road, Williston.
Good evening, both. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Pete. Before I begin the reading of the staff report, I want to provide some context around the interpretation of the bylaw. So, as we all know, our bylaws sometimes make statements that are vague or open to interpretation. Often DRB has to make discretion. The multiple open space concepts that we're going to talk about was something that has been an idea that's percolated with other applicants in the planning and zoning office for a while. This is the first time that an applicant has brought such a proposal forward. And I just wanted to provide that context to the DRB about where that concept came from that we'll discuss further. All right, so this is a request for a discretionary permit to divide a 10.76 acre parcel to create 2 new house lots. The first lot will remain with the existing dwelling and barn and have an open space parcel. The second lot will be about a ½ acre and have a proposed dwelling on it with an open space parcel. And the third house lot will be 0.7 acres with an open space parcel. So 1 existing dwelling, 2 dwellings proposed, a total of 6 lots. The staff's recommendation tonight could go either way. The application could be closed and decided tonight if the DRB modifies conclusion of law number 3 and condition of approval number 3A. However, if the DRB concurs with the Conservation Commission for open space layout, then a continuance is recommended so the applicant can revise their subdivision layout. And what follows is a couple timelines for having the application adequately reviewed by the Conservation Commission should that decision be made. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the discretionary permit. Pre-application took place last year on December 12th. The Conservation Commission recommendations are included. Public Works comments are included. Fire Department comments are included, however, with limitations due to their standard being a standard policy and not an ordinance. No comment letters were received at the time of mail out. We did receive a comment letter this evening that has been passed out to you from the owners of 1259 Butternut Road who are present this evening. Did we get any other comments? Oh, just the Marcotte, okay. We got a couple extra ones today, so I just wanted to double check. There was only 1 comment letter for this application. What follows is a summary of the pre-application recommendations and the applicant's response. One of the biggest things for this application is that when it went through pre-application review, the listed acreage on the assessor's card is less than 10.5 acres. When the applicant went to do a survey, the acreage was to determine to be more than 10.5 acres by a quarter acre. So it's a property that's right on that threshold between a standard subdivision and an open space subdivision. Everything else, they have addressed in their application for those pre-app recommendations. In terms of the agricultural rural residential zoning district, conclusions number 3 and 4 are provided, and conditions 3B, 19, and 20. So the dimensional standards, building height's not applicable at this time. It'll be confirmed with administrative permit when homes are designed. Setbacks compliance is anticipated. A final plan shall identify 15-foot side and rear setbacks for each house lot. And staff does note that the bylaw does not have a configuration requirement. So though lot number 3 does have a funny layout, it is approvable. And I did confirm with the application that they are aware that the 15-foot setback creates what the development potential for lot 3 will be. Setbacks from the roads, Butternut Road complies as proposed. The structures will meet the 50-foot setback. Lot dimensions. The plat and site plans must be revised to designate a 40-foot private driveway easement from Butternut Road to each house lot. As we'll discuss in a moment further, though each lot is planned to be conveyed with its own open space lot, so each house with an open space lot in the deed, our bylaw still requires that an access easement be provided over separate lots. Open space development. So the DRB discussion is needed here and a possible continuance. The WCC, the Conservation Commission, recommended, and a condition is drafted, quote, one open space must be one parcel, and the proposed building lot shall be clustered closer together to reduce fragmentation of the open space, end quote. The DRB must make 2 decisions. 1, does the proposed layout meet the contiguity standards of WDB 31-7, or does it need revision? And 2, are multiple open space lots acceptable? So I break this discussion further down into the 2 concepts. First, number of open space lots. At pre-app, the parcel was known to be 10.38 acres. Now it's 10.76 acres above that 10.5 acre threshold. They are proposing 3 building lots and 3 open space lots. And the open space would be deed restricted and platted and conveyed with the house lots. WDB 3177 states that protected open space must be platted on a separate lot. The singular language in this requirement suggests that it will be one lot, but it does not clearly require it. Configuration and contiguity of open space. Condition number 3B necessitates a revision to the layout. A layout that was otherwise acceptable at pre-application prior to the open space requirement. Conservation Commission finding number 4 concluded the proposed open space lot is not contiguous. And they go on further to say, but it could be approved under Williston's development standards for open space subdivisions, if the applicant revises the site plan. So the open space standards of both Chapter 31 and then thinking about our conservation areas, Chapter 27, it lists 7 resources, and 4 are not applicable on this property. So we don't have unique natural communities, we don't have farmlands of mapped local importance. There's 2 resources on this property: significant wildlife habitat and watershed buffers. And those are limited to the edges of the property, particularly on the corners where there's wetland buffers. And 1 category remains, other lands. 31727 states that other lands within the proposed development may be included as protected open space in order to provide the minimum open space requirement and comply with the contiguity standard. So the bylaw gives the DRB and the Conservation Commission discretion in determining the configuration of open space, but it is required that open space be contiguous. However, the bylaw does not provide further guidance for what contiguous open space looks like, especially in areas that are not mapped for habitat protection, wetlands, important farmland, or steep slopes. So this is a cleared site. It's used as forest pasture, which is agricultural, but it is not mapped as a farmland, which is based more on the soils of the mapped soils of the area. So the layout, where the home sites and driveways were placed was totally fine at pre-application. Now things are changing because of that parcel being larger than 10.5 acres. What follows is excerpts from the bylaw for the DRB's consideration. Housing design and open space. So the Conservation Commission provided no specific recommendations for 31-8. Home sites must be on a portion of the lot that is 25% or less of the developable area. And then what follows is 31-9, lots and home sites. So standards for water, wastewater are handled in Chapter 15, and the other standards are discussed as follows. Other things like minimized visual impacts are not applicable because the property slopes upwards. The home sites will be buffered with the trees along the edge of the property line. And there were no specific recommendations from the DRB or conservation at pre-application about view shed, screening, that type of thing. Subdivision and final plans, a specific condition is included. The plot that was provided shows more of a building envelope relationship between the open space and house lots. This needs to be clarified on the plat that each lot is monumented and surveyed and noted on this survey with the same lot lines and monumenting standards of Chapter 12. Affordable homes and growth management, they're proposing fewer than few homes, so it was able to proceed from pre-application to tonight's discretionary permit hearing without growth management. Access compliance is anticipated, so a significant amendment was made since pre-application. Originally, individual driveways were proposed for the two new homes. Now a shared curb cut on Butternut Road is proposed. There has been some back and forth with the Public Works Department about the driveway and culvert design. Final plans shall address the comments of the Public Works Department. Their comment memo indicated that things had been worked out with the applicant in terms of that design. On-site utilities, electrical, telecommunication needs to be underground. On-site sewage, we need to see the plans for, the plans were prepared by a licensed designer and have been submitted for the septic design. An on-site water supply, so final plans must include that state water and wastewater permit to demonstrate compliance with 15.10 and pre-application number 2. The applicant did provide a water yield summary indicating an average yield of 7.8 gallons per minute, and the well already serving the property has 30 gallons per minute. And the applicant requests that existing well act as evidence to satisfy the requirement of 15.10 for water supply. Density complies as proposed. The density analysis would allow up to 4 homes. 3 are proposed. Landscaping, there is a specific recommendation. So for the north, east, and south boundaries, the 50-foot existing vegetation buffer is maintained. There is a recommendation that the statement about tree cutting along lots 2 and 3 include a statement that if anything is removed, so if a dead, dying, or diseased or invasive species is removed, that the gaps created by the removed vegetation be replanted in order to maintain the effective screening. And I do note that this standard is just for screening, not to make structures completely invisible from Butternut Road. Street trees, also not applicable for open space development and in rural areas where roads pass through existing woods. Conservation Commission standard recommendations. The Conservation Commission did review this area. No development is proposed within core habitat or wildlife travel corridor that is mapped on the northeast corner of the property. And no specific comments were made about scenic viewshed at pre-application. Watershed health also complies as proposed. There is a little bit of class 2 wetlands along the property and class 3 as well. No development is proposed in those areas, and they do propose signage to delineate the buffer. Lastly, impact fees. Parks and rec impact fee and transportation impact fee. are applicable. I do note that the school impact fee has been retired as of last week. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Doug and Anna, what do you have to supplement the staff report?
A few things. I guess I do want to just quickly reiterate the changes that were made from pre-app, driven somewhat from neighbor comments that were received at that time, and they include consolidation of driveways originally at pre-app lot 2 and 3, which are the southern two existing or proposed lots, had individual driveways. Those driveways have been consolidated to one and has been moved further to the south to be south of the park home across the street. So those driveways don't line up anymore. Evergreen trees are proposed on lot 2, the center lot, to supplement the existing landscaping along Butternut. And that's just to try to cut down on the visual impacts of the new home from again, the park property. There are 5 new evergreen trees proposed along the frontage of lot 2. One thing that Emily touched on that doesn't show up on these plans, but now show up on current plans that we worked with the Department of Public Works closely. They had some concerns about stormwater runoff from the improvements and how it may affect the drainage swale along Butternut. So we're proposing now which, like I said, isn't shown on this plan, a stormwater detention pond is being proposed along the frontage of Butternut Road, just east of the wood line, so that detention pond will pick up stormwater from the existing house site on lot 3 and 2, and retain it and then slowly discharge it into the Butternut drainage swale. So that's an improvement that, as Emily said, we worked hard with DPW and they are now happy with that stormwater design, and as a result produced the letter in your package that basically says that. The big issue, I think, is open space and how that looks. I don't know if it's good or bad to be the guinea pigs for proposing individual open space lots, but that's what we think is appropriate for this layout. As Emily said, there are very few significant natural resources on this site. It's 10 acres, and we just have a small encroachment of a Class 2 wetland along the east property line and a portion of the north and south property lines, and along with that would be a travel corridor. So we certainly are incorporating those natural features into the various 3 proposed open space lots. We're not trying to get out from underneath the requirement for 75% open space. The 3 open space lots total 75% in accordance with the bylaws. So really the goal is really, I think, to have the individual lots be able to own and manage their own open spaces. As the previous applicant said, if we have one big, in this case, small open space lot, it will probably be owned by the HOA, so there'd be three members of an HOA, and they would have to manage it and agree how to manage it, how to utilize it, and such. That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, because as we know. So we just feel, because it's such a small area and it lacks significant natural features, let's give the open space to the lot owners. As Emily said, they would be restricted to what they could and couldn't do in the open space, but at least it would be their own private property to do what they want with, and maintenance and ownership wouldn't be by committee. So As far as the specifics of the bylaw, we look to the definition of contiguous in 31.7.4, which is important here as far as is this open space contiguous. And the definition, I'm going to read it to you. Contiguous open space is generally defined as an area of forest and or natural community that is unfragmented by development and remains in a natural state. In establishing standards for continuity, the Conservation Committee and DRB will consider the context of the proposed development, including the type and relative value of resources as identified in WDB 27, 28, and 29, and the configuration of open space that will best ensure the protection of those resources. So first of all, we don't have an area of forest and or natural communities on this site. So we don't really meet this definition. Furthermore, as you read on, your task is to determine, what this open space looks like based on the value of the resources here. And again, our valuable resources are on the very fringe of the property. So the Williston Conservation Committee basically felt that the open space was fragmented. I guess we wouldn't really disagree with that, but we're basically saying, yes, it's fragmented, but it clearly doesn't have the natural resources that the intended bylaw wants to protect. So we would ask for a finding to say, even though the open space is somewhat fragmented because of the lack of natural resources on this site, the fragmentation is acceptable. That's it. Other than that, Emily brought up there was one condition about the tree cutting along Butternut Road. I think we'd want to have that modified just because of its vagueness. It basically just says that any gaps created by removal of vegetation shall be replanted in order to maintain effective screening, but not visible for WDB 3196. So if there's a dead maple tree that's threatening a house or power lines or whatever, somebody wants to cut it down, great, they cut it down, what do they replace it with? This just says you have to replace it. So a landowner would not have the specificity in this condition to know what to do. So we would either have that extra wording just removed, or it needs to be more specific to give better guidance. And clearly the other part of that, the note on the plans basically says, we recognize that tree clearing along Butternut has to occur where the driveway is going to be shown, and what else? So where site distances and site triangles may need to be cut at the driveway, and certainly if trees are cut for those two purposes, they wouldn't be replanted because that's a permanent condition. And it really, I don't really have any good suggestions. It can't say of a like type. You're not going to replace a 15-inch dead maple tree with a new 15-inch live tree, obviously. We'd be open to staff recommendations, I guess, to tweak that condition. Again, we're not adverse to it. We just need some specificity to that. That's all we have. Andy, you good?
Okay, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
DRB members, questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Can I use my open space to benefit my building lot?
You can use your open space
To benefit my building lot? Or is open space? Which is it?
Open space you can use for gardens, landscaping, forestry, and agriculture, according to the bylaw. So you can...
Can I put my septic field there?
You can.
Okay.
According to the bylaw, you can. You can cross it with driveways, cross it with utilities.
Just curious, what happens if you have to put a mound system in? Can I still travel over the top of the mound
Well, the
if
mound
it's open
system,
space?
in this case, the mound system is proposed in the open space, which is allowed in the regulations. So the mound would be the first, obviously, would come with the building lot.
Because it, basically, when you put a mound in, normally you can't use it. You cannot be on that land. Driving over a mound is not good for the mound.
I agree.
So that's technically not open space then. At that point, it's now permitted. Just curious.
Mound systems are allowed in the open space.
Yeah, they're allowed.
So limitations, are there limitations of the use of protected open space? Yes. Agriculture and forestry, which does include community gardens and landscaping, crossings by roads, trails, and utility lines, trails, and sewerage. Any component of an individual or community sewerage system that is underground may be placed in the protected open space. And past interpretation is a mound is ground and there's stuff under it. So we have had that conversation before. Our bylaw views sewerage as you have your on-site sewage disposal system, and that's allowed in the open space.
I mean, driving over a mound would hasten the demise of the mound system.
Oh, yeah.
Nate, questions?
No questions.
Scott? Okay, members of the public, if you would like to address the board, come on up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for volunteering. My name is Bill Skiff. I live on Butternut Road, and I'm asking the DRB to deny this permit in full, outright. Open space is open space. Open space is not fragmented. It's open space. That 200-acre prior subdivision is a compromise, and it's a perfect example of what open space should do. It takes 200 acres, concentrates growth, and allows 191 acres to remain open. This is 10 acres, and they're shoehorning 3 subdivisions with private ownership of the open space. It's fragmented and it's inappropriate. And I disagree strongly. Undeveloped rural open space is valuable. The fact that it is undeveloped, open, and rural in and of itself is a value to the community. And to suggest that that land has no value is to defy what open space means and why it's so protected in the bylaws. I feel very strongly about this as a policy decision that the board should not allow fragmented open spaces to be privately assigned to homeowners who then have agency over that space that is simply maybe limited by a deed restriction. Oh, well, you can't put a shed on it, but it's not open space for a community garden because you would have to access it through a private landowner. This is a very strong policy decision about open space, and I feel really strongly that this permit should be denied. It's okay to build, it's okay to concentrate, but it's not okay to fragment open space and try to say that that's preservation of open space. 1.3 acres, 2.31, and 4.39, boom, 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 that's not open space. That is a policy decision that I would really strongly encourage the board not to follow. Setting that aside, this doesn't comply with the bylaws of the town, and I'm asking that you deny this permit in full. And also, I don't know if you don't, I did hear that the utilities were underground, but that's okay. But really, this is a decision on open space, and it's a strong one. So I oppose it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Other members of the public that would like to address the board? Come on up, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Richard Park, 1259 Butternut Road, which is across the street from this development proposal. I have submitted through staff some written comments that I put together after the Conservation Commission meeting recently. And I can read it all, but I'll highlight it, and if you'd like me to take a deeper dive, I'll do that. The first issue to me is that this project is much more appropriate as a single lot of 4 or more acres and would be much more consistent with the neighborhood and with the building lot being appropriately cited in the building lot being appropriated cited in the middle of the whole lot. I agree with Mr. Skiff's point that to somehow say that contiguous open space can be mitigated, compromised, or thrown out because it isn't a forest or a wetland. This meadowlands is a valuable natural resource for endangered birds, for bees and butterflies and other pollinators which we need, and that to break it up into 3 ownerships, it could easily become just 3 big lawns, and it's not going to be managed as open space as I think ever envisioned by the Conservation Commission. If for some reason the owner wants to go ahead and propose 2 new buildings on this property, they should be clustered to include the existing building. And it would be more appropriately sited adjacent to the existing dwelling and consistent with the scenic viewshed. Butternut is one of the last remaining rural dirt roads in our community, and we think it's important to preserve it. So goal 1 would be 1 dwelling, but if there are going to be 2 dwellings, then they should be clustered together with the current existing building. Next, the proposed grading at the shared driveway entrance and into the site is incomplete, and it doesn't take us all the way up to where you have to meet grade, and there is going to be extensive earthwork required to get you there. The conceptual layouts need to be updated accordingly to accurately demonstrate the driveway design that would be required to access the proposed building lots. I'm not an engineer, for sure, but I have a fear that should we look at those plans, we're going to see an incredible amount of disturbing of that property, and it's going to verge on looking, well, it'll be very disturbed and border on looking industrial to get from the bottom of that hill up through, there's a gap of 10 feet from the design they proposed to start the driveway to where they've left off, and we haven't seen how much earthwork has to be done to remove that 10 feet of grade, and I think it's going to be pretty ugly. We have lived on Butternut for 46 years, and when we moved there, the forest to the south of us, you could just walk through, it was level. Now, the culvert that does drain and will drain this property goes through that wood and is now a 12 to 20 foot canyon. And this is the first time I've heard about the retention basin, and that's very encouraging to us. And I'm sorry if I should have seen it beforehand. I didn't, and that would be a very good idea for this project, whether it's 1 home or 2 or none. So I think that's all I'll say, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about my written input.
DRB members, any clarifying questions for Mr. Park? Paul?
Not this time.
Scott?
All set.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other members of the public that would like to address the board? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Shane Skiff. I'm a resident. Well, I live in Bozeman, Montana, but I grew up at 1625 Butternut Road. I just wanted to kind of get a younger voice in, maybe. I think most of the general points have been, the more specific points have been, of my concerns have been touched on, but, you know, I do recognize that Williston's character is changing. We're a growing town. Development is inevitable, but I do not think that subdivisions and developments like the one proposed contribute to a sustainable and happy and healthy future for Williston. And as somebody who is thinking about maybe living here in the long term, this kind of development concerns me. And I would encourage the board to just, you know, these sort of seemingly small decisions are really important and accumulate over time. Open space is a finite resource. It can't be undone. It's capital for Williston. It's important to Williston. I just encourage the board to, you know, take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public would like to address the board? Doug and Anna, any comments on what you just heard?
Yeah, just a few, if you don't mind. First of all, we're not, I don't think Anna and I are certainly suggesting that the open space proposed has no value. However, you know, we have to play by your rules and your bylaws and your definitions. So, you know, when we lay this out, we have to, as Emily said in her overview, you know, realize that, you know, this doesn't meet the higher levels provided in the bylaw and definitions, that there are no unique natural communities, there are no rare, threatened, and endangered species, there are no proposed trail networks, there's no farmland of importance here, there's no flood hazards. So those are the criteria that we use to establish value in what's protected in open space. And those features don't exist on the site. So it's not that we don't value it, it's just that this land doesn't meet those higher natural resources. A couple other things, you know, this open space will be privately owned, whether it'll be privately owned by 3 homeowners individually or as a group, but you know, the Williston Conservation Committee, I'm sure, has no interest in, you know, taking control of a 7-acre open space lot. So it will be owned and maintained by private citizens in either scenario. And just to remind the public, you know, this is basically 2-acre zoning, and as the density shows, this site can accommodate 4 homes, and we're only proposing 3. So to suggest that we're jamming more units in here than what the bylaw allows is just not correct. We're actually under designing. We would be allowed 4 units on this site. Lastly, I think it's important to note too that, you know, the Conservation Committee, as you know, recommended 1 open space lot, and to reconfigure our plan in the existing building lots to be less fragmented. That's not our preference, but if it meant, you know, an approval or denial from you folks, we certainly would do that. So I want to put that out there. We would prefer to have you approve what's on the plan, but if you support the Williston Conservation Committee's direction, that's fine too.
Okay, anything else, DRB members? Okay, we are gonna continue this. We're gonna continue it to, well, we'd like your input on when you would like it continued. If you take a look at the staff report at the bottom of page 1, there are some options with due dates for revised plans. Thank you, Emily, or whoever's displaying that. And so it doesn't matter to the DRB which date that you would like to come back. Do you have a preference?
So I would ask, I guess, what the reason for continuance would be.
We're in agreement with the conservation's recommendation. That's the essence of this.
This gives you a chance to rethink it.
This gives you a chance to.
No, that's fine, I just.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I haven't said that yet, so.
Yeah. We're gonna have, thank you, Doug. We're gonna have a conversation with staff, give staff direction. And you can circle back with Emily tomorrow and, but that's in essence what our position is.
So to answer your question, I think December 9th is a bit aggressive with the holidays and such, to get revised plans in for that date. So we would ask that.
January 28th?
Yeah, if January 28th is equivalent to the December 17th submittal deadline, that's what we're looking at.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, next up is 378 Commerce Street. Would the applicant please come forth? Gentlemen, familiar faces, if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Brian Courier, O'Leary Burke, Civil Associates, 13 Corporate Drive, Essex.
And I'm Al Sanico with Allenbrook Development, 31 Commerce Street, Commerce Ave. LNP. 31 Commerce Ave in South Burlington.
Thank you. Staff goes next.
Thank you, Pete. All right. This is a request for a site plan amendment at 378 Commerce Street to establish an outdoor storage area. There is a history of non-conforming outdoor storage on this property and also in this part of town, as shown in the picture on the right. And that will be discussed later in the staff report. Staff is recommending that the DRB take testimony, close the hearing, and approve the application. The DRB should discuss the outdoor storage and bike parking with the applicant and edit conditions 21 through 23 accordingly. Looking at the project history, this is the first time the DRB has reviewed this request. Prior approvals include a site plan for the approximately 31,000 square foot industrial building just to the south of 378 Commerce Street. It's on the same parcel. There was a previous approval for an indoor soccer facility that never came together. And then prior to that, approval for the actual building at 378 Commerce Street, which was proposed larger than what is existing. No advisory boards were consulted for this hearing for Interior Departmental review. Public Works memo was submitted, no conditions associated with it, and similar to other staff reports tonight, the fire department comments are included with limitations. No public comment letters were received at the mail out. So moving into the bylaw chapters, for vested rights, there are a number of and non-conforming lots, use and structures. There are several non-conformities on the parcel, including outdoor storage and parking in the front setback along the east property line, outdoor storage within the setback along the north and east property lines, outdoor storage in undesignated areas throughout the site, and no bike parking as proposed in site plan 07-12. So the DRB has power to correct nonconformities where they are reasonably proportionate to the scale of development. These nonconformities are referenced throughout the report. The DRB should discuss the nonconformity with the applicant and discuss solutions that are proportional to the proposed development. So for the Industrial Zoning District West, the dimensional standards complies as proposed. The outdoor storage area that is proposed is associated with a 9-foot type 3 landscape buffer, and it meets the setback from the northern property line. Outdoor sales and storage compliance is anticipated. It's only permitted within side or rear yards and where it is specifically designated on an approved site plan in the zoning district. The plans submitted by the applicant show existing outdoor storage in the setbacks along the north and west property lines and in the front yard in 2 areas, both along the entrance to 378 Commerce Street and between 378 Commerce Street and the road. The gravel area west of 378 Commerce Street has a long history of outdoor storage as seen on historic imagery. So site plans should show all areas that will be used as outdoor storage. The DRB should discuss the location of outdoor storage on site with the applicant and then decide how to prevent outdoor storage in the front setback as pictured below. This is a view from Commerce Street looking in towards the site. As you can see, vehicles and trailers parked within the setback. So site plan 07-12 is the most recently approved site plan for this site. It showed narrower access and landscaping in the area that is now being used as storage, which is seen here. Staff is recommending that landscaping is unlikely to survive in this location given current conditions, and so staff can recommend that landscaping or possibly a line of boulders are installed in this area to prevent future parking and storage use. The condition you'll see that's drafted also mentions reseeding this area. So that approximate location of either landscaping or boulders, obviously the vision triangles there would be in consideration as well, to be discussed with the applicant. And so, sort of repeating myself here, but there's 2 actions that are recommended. Basically, designate all areas on the site that will be used as outdoor storage in both the side and rear yards for both 378 and 430 Commerce Street to the south, and then reseed that area and provide landscaping or a physical barrier such as boulders to prevent that outdoor storage that is what's shown. So this correlates with conditions 21 and 22. The DRB should discuss these with the applicant and then update the conditions accordingly. For access, this complies. The parcel has access on Commerce Street, a local road. Driveways they meet the requirements. For off-street parking and loading, for vehicle parking, it complies. The DRB has some discretion in determining required parking for industrial sites. It starts at 1 parking spot per 1,000 square feet. The existing parking to the south of 430 Commerce Street, which is on, once again, the same parcel, has 43 parking spaces, including 2 ADA spaces. Staff is recommending that this is sufficient to serve both 378 and 430 Commerce Street. For bike parking and trip facilities, compliance is anticipated. There are no existing outdoor or indoor bike parking spaces at either of those addresses, and there's no end-of-trip facility. DRB should decide if the applicant shall provide the minimum requirement of 4 outdoor bike parking spaces, likely at 430 Commerce Street, given that that's the location of the existing parking. This table demonstrates those calculations given building square footage. Yes, for maintenance, once again, compliance is anticipated. The Chapter 16 requires that snow storage and solid waste containers are shown on applications for a discretionary permit. Final plans should identify snow storage areas, show the location of solid waste containers, and how solid waste containers are screened from public view. See condition 24. And lastly, landscaping. This complies. The applicant is proposing plantings to create a 100-foot long, 9-foot wide type 3 buffer along the northern property line to screen the proposed outdoor storage area. This will supplement the existing vegetation on the property line, but in conversations with the applicant, staff's opinion was that the existing vegetation was not sufficient to meet those buffer requirements. And then no additional screening is proposed on the western property line due to the location of an existing stormwater pond. Improving the landscape buffer on this side of the property would not be proportional with the development proposed because it would require some regrading of that stormwater pond. What follows are a list of findings, conditions, conclusions, and conditions of approval for the DRB to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So, proposed conditions of approval, number 22. This is in the front of the property. Staff has proposed some reseeding and boulders to define that area, eliminate the parking and storage in the future. Are you agreeable to that?
Well, what I'd like to do is just, reseed it, obviously, and get the grass growing back there. I think based on, the staff's recommendation that we won't be parking there anymore. We'll make sure that tenant doesn't park there. And the reason that we're here is to establish this storage area in the back, which will help to clean up that area as well as other areas that they have stuff kind of all over the place. But we also, we were the ones who went to this tenant initially to try to get them to clean up. We weren't asked by staff to get it cleaned up. We kind of came to you guys, so we should have cleaned it up a little better before we came to you instead of shooting ourselves in the foot here with parking on the front lawn we knew that shouldn't be there. But the reason we're doing this is to clean these things up. So rather than truck boulders in at this point, maybe at some point in the future, if we can't get this tenant to agree to park off the grass, which we think, there's plenty of parking out front right now that they can park. It just becomes the guys that work in the back and the people that work in the front, they park out front, and these guys park out back. They're just we'll talk with them and make sure that they don't park there anymore. But we'll certainly be willing to do the landscaping. We'd like to hold off on the boulders if we don't have to right now. For that section.
Yeah, the challenge is enforcement. And, you can reseed and then people start parking there again, and then planning and zoning has to issue a notice of violation, and you know the drill.
Yeah.
So that's, it could be just solved with, some, boulders is kind of a too big. I think the scale of a boulder isn't necessary, but
2 or 3 foot round rock.
Yeah.
Can't be moved easily with the car that plows into it.
and isn't an obstacle with snow plowing, and that's what's envisioned here, and I don't think that's unreasonable. And the bike parking spaces.
We had a bike rack there originally, and obviously bike racks are very precious items in towns like this, and they come up missing very, very quickly if you don't bolt them down somehow. So we can certainly put another bike rack out front. I mean, it's not like any of the tenants are demanding a bike rack right now, but if it's part of the bylaws and part of, you know, the regulations, when, you know, our fault if it gets taken or removed from site, but we'll certainly put a 4-station bike rack in.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments on the proposed conditions?
I'm a little bit concerned, well, not concerned, but I would like to reduce the landscaping that we have between the two properties behind the storage area. It's pretty heavily wooded right there right now, and I think to be able to put that much landscaping in that strip would be probably having to destroy some of the trees that are there. That's quite
Thank you.
a hefty planting for that area that's already got trees growing in it, and pretty well subdivided, you know, it isolates us from the neighbors. We can, in the summertime, we can't even see through that.
Put it projected on the screen, let's take a look.
What's the,
Yeah, so it's,
what are we saying, 45?
no, over here. So there's 2 larger trees, 3 small shrubs, and 13 cedars.
That are
along the 100-foot boundary in between that proposed fenced storage area and the adjacent property.
So you're citing what's proposed to be added?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the requirement based on the type 3 landscaping buffer that's applicable in the industrial zoning district. I think what we're asking for is the consideration of the DRB. Is that totally necessary given the existing vegetation that's there and a fence is being proposed? Could that be scaled back to say, you know, 50% of the type 2?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the dark trees that are in the parking lot of the neighbor is the shadow of the trees that are actually there. So that whole line is loaded with trees. And you're gonna have me put trees in between them, and I'll be killing roots to the trees to plant the new trees, and it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Is it worth pulling up Google Earth? Is that what you're doing?
Are either of these pictures relevant? We have pictures of trees in our packet, what are those?
I think.
So this is the view from the,
Yeah.
Commerce Street. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's the front parking lot of 430.
Is that the one next to you, or is that your?
No, that's the front of this building, so the back of it is where, I say the front, it's the side yard, that's the front parking lot.
Right, right.
So that would be the south parking lot, and then on the other side of that building is the middle of the 2 buildings, and then what we're talking about is the north side of 378.
This is the north side of 370, and this is the neighbor's
Oh, the neighbor's side,
building.
okay.
So you can see the existing vegetation there.
Similar vegetation on the south side of ours as well, between us and CSE, so there's quite a bit of trees in there right now.
You can't really see it from the other side. This is 378 here.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, from here, you can't even see the building. God bless you.
We'll take that under consideration. That's pretty thick.
I would say that the fence being proposed is an ability the DRB has to reduce those buffering. You know, the fence isn't on the line in this case, but it is around the storage.
Yep. No, so noted. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Anything else?
So maybe on item 21, we can get a little more descriptive as to what I should be doing. It's a mechanical contracting business that's in 430. They sometimes get, you know, rooftop units delivered or piping delivered, and they store it next to the trailers in between where they have trailers backed up, you know, to the loading docks and whatnot. I mean, on any given day, they could be storing a few items that come in a shipment, and then a week later, they're gone. Is that something that we have to designate as storage areas, or is that just working areas? I mean, it's the back of the building, so to speak, where the loading docks are, and in this picture, you can see the trucks that are like stacked in the middle of the parking lot. You can go to Mountain Air any morning, and there's that or more than that trucks in the yard going in to get their orders. Within an hour, they're back in their trucks and they're off on the road. So that's, a lot of those trucks that are there are not like parked there all the time. They're just going and picking up their materials, getting their job.
I don't think that's a big concern of the board.
Okay, I know it looks a little messy in this picture because there's trucks, but they're gone at, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
They're not
just to be
there.
clear, the ortho photo used is just meant for context. That's just where things were on that.
It's, I mean, the intent is designate on your plan, and Brian, you know what to do. Okay, designate on your plan, all areas that could be used for storage. And if it's, if it's material that's being moved because it's a work in progress, et cetera, I don't think that that's in the spirit of stored materials.
Right.
And, but just, designate as much area as you are allowed with the bylaws as storage area, and then that's gonna give you the most latitude,
Okay.
okay?
It has to be on the sides of the building, so it just can't be in the front.
Can't be in the.
Yeah.
Can't be in the front.
So, so that should be shown on your on your plan.
Yep.
And then, as long as you adhere to the areas that you put on that plan, you're gonna be fine.
Okay. Now, the reason that we're doing this is to get most, if not, we won't get it all, but a lot of it into this fenced-in area for both
Yep.
view as well as protection, because people are starting to,
But don't limit yourself to that area,
okay,
okay?
Yeah.
That's my message to you.
sure.
Is that's great what you're proposing, but you and I both know there's gonna be storage outside of that, so identify it on the plan.
Okay.
Staff, you can comment at any time on any of that.
I have nothing to add to that.
Okay, great.
But you're good with it if we do that? Put the boulders in?
The wording that Peach had said about designating any area that will be used for storage is consistent with the recommendation. That's, staff's
Yep.
opinion.
Right, right. Anything else on the proposed conditions?
I don't think so, do you?
No?
DRB members, questions?
Nope.
We don't have a picture of the back half of the building. We have it in this little one, but in the large pictures, we don't see the back half with all of the vehicles parked there.
Where is that?
That's a parking lot on the south end of the site.
Is that the south side of the building?
Yeah. Yes, he's talking about this right
That'll
Okay.
now. Yeah,
That'll play out when the final plan.
Okay.
Scott, any questions?
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay. Any public comment? No? Okay. Okay. Good conversation. We're gonna close DP 25-03 at 8:44. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, DRB is going to go into deliberative session at 8:44. Okay, welcome back to the Williston Development Review Board. It's 9:18 on November 26, 2024. The DRB is out of deliberative session. We have three certificates of appropriateness. We're gonna bunch them all together and vote on them as a group. So the question is the chair authorized to sign on behalf of the DRB for all three?
Sure.
Nate Andrews, yay or nay?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay, although can I make the suggestion that you read into the record the HP numbers for each one?
Yes.
And I'm a yay.
Okay, great, thank you. Good suggestion, and I'm a yay. So the HPs that we were talking about are HP 25-02, HP 25-03, and HP 25-04. No change in your yay from the group?
No change.
Okay, thank you. The board chair will sign all three. Is there a motion for DP 25-04?
That's me. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Lisa Bradenharder, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 26, 2024, accept the recommendation of DP 25-4 and authorize this application to move forward to growth management and/or discretionary permit review.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Scott seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Chair's a yay. 5 in favor, none opposed. Motion carries. Is there a motion for DP 25-03?
Yes, there is. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 26, 2024, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 25-03 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans upon which this approval is based. We are making a couple of changes or modifications.
Right in front of you.
Yes, I know, I'm getting to the point right here, too. Under findings of fact, adding number 4, landscaping to the north of the proposed outdoor storage area is sufficient to meet the screening requirements of WDB Chapter 23. Adding to conclusions of law, number 3, the applicant does not need to provide additional landscaping to the north of the proposed outdoor storage area. And under conditions of approval, number 23, the applicant shall provide 4 outdoor bike parking spaces at 430 Commerce Street. Is that it? That's it.
That's it. Great. Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa seconds. Any discussion? Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 5 in favor, none opposed. I will note that DP 24-09 has been continued to January 28th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes dated November 12th?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes dated November 12th, 2024, as written.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Lisa seconds. Any discussion? Yay or nay? Nate?
Yay?
Paul?
Yay.
Lisa?
Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 5 in favor, none opposed. The meeting minutes are approved. Is there anything else to bring forth tonight? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.